unemployment a key area of focus. And it is for that reason that we've been mobilizing investments to come to our country from both local investors as well as offshore investors to come here to South Africa and open up factories and open up mines and open up a number of other businesses so that we can create jobs.
Well, in South Africa, the youth is expected to thrive in an economy that doesn't favor them. The unemployment rate for youth aged between 15 and 24 hit a staggering 52% this year. Entrepreneurship often described as the cure to our job crisis. But what skills, resources, or knowledge do young people need to succeed? And most importantly, do they have access to what would allow them to be active players in the economy of the country? Joining me in studio to discuss this tonight are three entrepreneurs. We're joined by the chairman of GEM Group, Gunguluza Enterprises, and Media Lebo Gunguluza, as well as the founder of the Grind Africa, Nola Mukwena, as well as the founder of Desert Startup Bootcamp, Mlanganisi. Apologies. I was struggling there. I was like, sure, this surname is really, really long. I really apologize for that.
No worries.
But just quickly tell us about the Startup Bootcamp.
So basically what we've tried to do over a period of about 4 years is build an ecosystem of rural startup entrepreneurs. And so those are your people that exist in the periphery of South African economic activity. And basically the thinking is that you want to be able to take someone from idea up to funding stage. And this is building in capacity. This is building in capacity one to be able to make use of the resources that are available for entrepreneurs, however limited they may be, but also just the skills to run a basic business. And that's the thing that we neglect, right? The assumption is everyone would have an idea of how to run a business, but that's not actually the case. And so you want to build in those basics. Once you build in those basics, you want to integrate that person into a community. Now, a community that exists of a couple of people. So you're looking at other entrepreneurs, you're looking at government especially, but you're also looking at investors and specifically the market, right? Because ultimately you want to get that person from the idea into the market, which is what sustains a business idea and not necessarily continuous funding that people get. So we've been doing this for about 4 years now, all across the rural provinces from the Northern Cape, where I come from, in the Free State. We're doing it down in the Western Cape. And these are your small entrepreneurs that are doing some really innovative work.
And the funding for the project?
And so we're working with different partners. We've worked very closely with the US Embassy, CAF South Africa, but also VPUU, which is an NGO down in the Western Cape. And so we're speaking to much bigger partners now where we're looking to say, can you invest into the skills of entrepreneurs and not necessarily give entrepreneurs money? And that's the mistake a lot of us make, right? We're like, hey, Aldrin, you look cool, you have really nice ties, so we're going to give you money and we think you're going to be able to run a business. But that's not necessarily the case. Now, the investments that the partners are making are saying, we want to see someone that has the following skills, we want to see someone that has the following capabilities, and that's what's currently happening.
And Nolo, just on that particular point, because sometimes what you find is that people who get access to these networks, but actually can't do the job. They can't run the companies, right. And then that's an indictment on every other young entrepreneur who tries to get into the business. Then Ulebu will come and like, young people buy a shoe.
Yeah.
That is a problem, right?
100%. It really is a massive thing. We really feel like for us as the Grind Africa, we prioritize delivery over everything. Another thing we have to talk about, though, is let's face reality. Young people have never had the chance to pay school fees. I think any experienced entrepreneur will tell you the first few years is literally a degree program on its own. You're going to learn, and we find that the best way to get young entrepreneurs to pay school fees is to get them to focus on the right opportunities. Yeah. And so what we believe in is large-scale opportunities can impact large-scale amounts of young people. This whole thing of entrepreneurs entrepreneurs, youth entrepreneurs, amauti kawashi, ichisanyama, all those sort of things. Not to look down on that, but we don't believe that you can have a ripple effect that's sort of there. All the money and opportunity that's needed, we believe, already exists in South Africa. And when the Grand Africa was founded, we found staggering statistics. I mean, the first being that university students in South Africa, in terms of traditional university sector tertiary, they spend about 3 billion rand a year on 3 big things. The first thing, obviously, residence. But the second thing is alcohol, and the third is airtime. And so we found out if there's that much spending power, then surely the opportunities do exist. However, young people aren't thinking at the right level. And to talk about South Africa as an environment is something that's also very important. We find it sad that, just across the border, President Masisi of Botswana, we're doing work with him. He's been so intentional about driving an economy that's inclusive to young people. And so we find that there are leaders in the region who are doing that. But for South African youth, I might say the growth for us might lie outside of this economy. We might have to look more into a regional approach, which means we need to think bigger.
And that's the strange thing, because when you speak to other young entrepreneurs or people who want to venture into entrepreneurship, they almost look at the immediate community, like for instance the car wash, a small business selling books and so forth. But they don't really look into going into the continent, going all the way up to the continent.
Things have changed. I mean, the world now has become global. It's become a global village, and we, as the government, and in fact, as a country, we must embrace the power of the fourth industrial revolution and the power that technology brings to us. You've got a small gadget called a cell phone. That's probably the most powerful computer in the world. Now, any product can be consumed using that. You've got things like Uber Eats where people can buy anything and sell anything. I'm going to ask you a question. Who's the richest man in the world at the moment? It's Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos owns one little thing, and it's called an Amazon.com. Who's the richest man in China? It is Alibaba, Jack Ma. What does he own? One little thing, a website. So an online store or a web platform already tells you that you are reaching a global market. Why are we limiting ourselves to regional markets? Let me even add on that, is that with those guys, they sell to any guy and anyone, anywhere in Africa, anywhere in China, anywhere, because you've opened up the market. But we are so limited in our minds that we always think that the work that we should be doing as Africans is only local. As a result, for me, it was important to launch a thing called Wizi Africa, because similar to Shopify, that every young person must be able to create their own online store. Because a physical store, firstly, you need to find a space which costs you money. That means you have to pay rent. You need to also buy stock. That means inventory to stock that. Where does a young man get that money? And then you still, on top of that, need to find staff to work there. But an online store solves all of those problems to make you global.
Sorry, just a quick one on that level. I was one at the workshops that you were at, which was around property. And one of the points that you raised was that there seems to be a lot of emphasis on building, for instance, the hotels. People are not using hotels anymore.
Yes.
There's now the teleconference that's happening, and you're speaking about even storage, that's where the new market is.
Everything is moving to warehousing, because when did you last go hire a DVD to go play in your machine? Things are changing.
Sorry, Noli, you want to add something?
Yeah, like I like what Lebo's saying. I do think, though, it is a very limited conversation. When you're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, we have to talk about the context of Africa. I'll tell you now, the fourth industrial revolution is not about technology. It's about commodities. Because in the very phones that we type on, the very phones that have Amazon, what's in there? Cobalt, coltan, lithium. Where's that all found? Here in Africa.
Yeah, but the DRC is unstable.
100%.
That's the problem.
But that's one country. There are countries like South Africa which can benefit from better institutions, and the regulation is there. I am not downplaying platforms, but I am saying Alibaba is incredible. Amazon is incredible. However, those are just two platforms. What makes them valuable is the physical commodity they're moving through the platform. And so my point is,
just to interject
here,
there's a thing called drop shipping. You know, drop shipping, there's a young man in the US. He owns nothing. All he does, he goes order stock, he puts stock online, and then when the order comes through, he collects the money, and then what he does, he goes and gets the stock delivered to where he doesn't even see the stock. So what I'm trying to say that the world, we must embrace the change of this world, we must take advantage, and you can teach yourself all of these things directly from access to internet. The most important thing this country needs to provide is access to internet, because access to internet can teach you so much.
Mhlangani, so you're shaking your head there.
Let's
hear what Mhlangani says to say. Yeah.
So I think the tech conversation, and we must be careful not to get caught in the tech conversation because it's the buzz, and I totally agree, right? But the context of tech is critical, right? If you're in an area that doesn't have 5G, you can't do a lot of the stuff that Lebu was speaking about. But it's also important, Aljan, to sort of contextualize when we speak about entrepreneurship, but we also speak about the development of entrepreneurship, we must speak about our context. So for me, and I think this is something I want to sort of drive home as an important point, is that the most sustainable entrepreneurs are not going to be entrepreneurs that are going to be a Jack Ma. It's not going to be a Mark Zuckerberg. It's going to be someone who knows how to solve the water problem in their community. Just say, okay.
So it's the immediate problems that we face as a community.
Exactly,
right now.
and that's where the opportunity of African entrepreneurship is, right?
Let me just quickly move the conversation a bit forward. The multinational companies that we have in the country, do they have a role to play when it comes to incubations, for instance? Is there a role that they should be playing?
I actually don't think so. I don't think we should be giving them that kind of responsibility. One, also because there's no real interest in them succeeding. One, because if you're going to be playing a role in incubation, it's either you're incubating people that are going to be plugging into your value chain or competing with you directly. So there's no real incentive to put big money into that. They must just pay their taxes. That's all I care about when it comes to multinationals. The people that must be worried about the context of job creation and entrepreneurship is government. Now, I'll give you an example, and it's something, for instance, the Minister of Small Business must think about. As a small business, if you turn over anything above R1 million a year, you pay VAT. Now, VAT is payable on an invoice every single month, right? So if I'm invoicing, for instance, 1.5 million, I'm paying 15% of that, I must pay over to SARS, whether or not my invoice has been paid within 30, 60 to 90 days. And you see, so those are the factors that are killing the businesses that actually employ the people that solve the problems in our communities.
Lebu, do you want to add something on that?
You know, we're talking about semantics, guys, because at the end of the day, for me, you know, the most important thing for me is that we know very well that our people don't have money, and they get given a runaround and whenever they want to access cash. And I always say to myself, what is the easiest way that people can start operating without money? To me, that's always the case, because even the use of, you might underplay and say, no, social media. Social media, for example, today is feeding a lot of kids. A girl that's got a phone, she gets paid 6,000 rands per post, and she just had a big followership, and she's now feeding a family. I'm just trying to say that.
But what happens when I'm sitting in the
No. I'm saying to you, there are other factors that you can use to build a business.
Sure.
But those factors always first require you to have some bit of capital. And I'm saying we need to start sometimes where there is no capital in order to build a business that requires capital.
So sorry, Lebu, just in a sentence or so. So you're saying that there's an industry that's not being tapped into?
Yeah, I'm saying that there's huge opportunities, and it's just that the more we drive people to these elements and areas that always require capital, and our people get given a runaround when they want capital, and they end up doing nothing. I always say, start with what you have. Start with the little thing that you have. Build some form of capital.
Nono's head is like shaking vigorously. What do you have to say?
No, look, because as a young man, I'm telling you now, I live in a country where my fellow young people are still buying Vodacom specials that say, pay R2.50, get 10 unlimited minutes for the next 10 minutes. People are still buying data for 1 week. Well, I mean, you need data day 8. Why don't you just buy data? But the point is they can't afford it. And so the conversation that Lebu said, look, I'm not saying technology is not important. Yeah. I am saying the access is critical. Yeah. If you grow up where I grew up in Mafikeng, look, not everyone can rap. There's no technology there anymore. Yeah. There are real challenges. However, what I am saying is that and this is where I agree with you, governments really need to shift their focus and say, what do we have? If we look at successful nations that have built over the last 25 years, one we can all think of is the UAE. The UAE said, what do we have? We have oil. They didn't try to become financiers. They didn't try to become soccer players. They said, you know what, let's get oil right. After we get oil, we're going to buy Man City anyway. I mean, that's the point.
But unfortunately, gents, we have to wrap this conversation. Unfortunately, okay, quickly.
Sure. So the most important thing we must understand is that technology augments a value proposition, not the other way around. And that's especially for the African continent, and that's the trap we must not fall into.
There's another debate to be had. Unfortunately,
just to close off, we are a creative nation, and if we're not using the platforms to use our creativity.
Okay, still ahead. The workplace is evolving, with some companies coming up with innovative ways to encourage employee productivity and well-being. We ask, what does a happy, healthy workplace look like? But first, let's take a look at your international weather.